I love you.
I love you too, babe.
We love you, Jesse. Bernie says he has an Adam Pascal anecdote.
Oh yeah, because I know
his
you're
audition.
because the Ren fans all love an Adam Pascal story, but
Let's get Adam on the phone now.
Good luck.
But as we talked about, I mean, the great thing about what Jonathan wrote was he had very specific ideas of what he wanted for each one of these roles, even if they were impossible to find. And we all know what Roger needed to be and wanted to be, but in those days, as I was saying earlier, that kind of voice didn't live on Broadway, and it wasn't in the chorus or wasn't in any other Broadway show. And if you were a rock star, the last thing you were going to do was be an off-Broadway musical. I mean, it just didn't make sense. It was pre the days of American Idol, all of that kind of stuff. And we were like 1 week away from rehearsal. And we had seen everyone that I knew, because I didn't know that many people at that time. And we had nobody. I mean, there was a time when it was like, you know what, you're gonna have to have someone from South Pacific be Roger. It's like they don't exist. And then,
Song glory.
but just quickly, because again, you do an open call, nobody cared about rent. And someone in our office, David Vicari, out of all, it was an office of 3 at the time, and we were all desperately, Will, David, and myself, trying, and then David said, I'm just gonna put an ad in the back of the Village. First we had put an ad in the back of the Village Voice saying we were doing this theater project, and nobody came. Because again, you heard the same story, who cares? And so then David had this idea that I'm gonna call the people who have little ads in the back of the Village Voice who say, if you're a rock star, I can teach you to be a rock star. If you're following the method here. So he called those like 6 people who had ads and said, I'll teach you guitar, or I'll teach you how to be a rock star. And he called them and said, hey, any of your students want to come, we're doing this, project. So it was this sort of like manipulated way for those coaches to then tell their clients that, oh, there's this thing that's auditioning. I never said the word theater. And if you want to come, just come between 3 and 5 to our office. And in those days, our waiting room was like this. And we were casting commercials and plays, and literally it was like, come down between 3 and 5, and we'll see you. And then it was like 3 o'clock, and I had to go back there, and I was like, David, so who's back there? Who showed up? Because we had no idea who would show up. And he said, I don't think you're going to be too happy, but there's like maybe one person. And then you walk back there, and literally in this little room was about 51 men who looked like Alice Cooper and Adam Pascal. Literally in this room. And at those days you're like dying, going to heaven just because he looked like that. And then you thought, oh, he'll never be able to sing. So by the time you got through all the Alice Coopers, then Adam came in, he sat there with his guitar, and he started singing, and I always said that, with his eyes closed, like every rock star really does, and he just sat there and sang, and it was like Nirvana. It was like, literally, I was like, I'll be right back. I went into the hallway, didn't have cell phones at the time, went to my office, and I called Jim, and was like, I got one. Literally, it was like, I don't care if he knows how to read music. I don't care if he knows how to open his eyes. That's Michael's problem. I was so done with this job. I was like, he sings, you can teach him how to do the rest. And then literally it was like, call Michael, call Tim, call Jonathan, and like literally 10 o'clock the next morning, it was like, and then it was like trying to convince Adam to show up the next morning at 10 o'clock, because now you have to tell the truth. This is like for an off-Broadway musical, about La Boheme. It was going downhill. But literally he came, and then, there was a moment when all of you, God bless, were like worried. Like the guy, anyway, and the rest.
But you have to also describe what he was wearing. He too sported the overalls, but he had like a swashbuckler a swashbuckler shirt underneath. No. Remember, like with the Adam Ants sleeves. He was very new romantic underneath overalls. It was very conflicted. But hey, I fell for it. Giggity, giggity.
But the night before rehearsals began, Jonathan hosted what he called a Peasants Feast. He had us all over at his ramshackle apartment over there in the sort of far west Soho weird netherworld.
Oh, come on now. It's all good.
No, it was.
There.
It wasn't really a neighborhood.
It cost
it was like
$10 billion to it.
Well, now it does, but back then it was. And I remember so distinctly Jonathan running up to me, like, "Oh my God, you have to meet this guy, Adam Pascal." He was so excited about him. So, you know.
Well, you were going to be like, you know, the what do you call them? Like Batman and Robin, what do you call it? The duo?
The dynamic duo.
The dynamic
They
duo.
were the dynamic duo.
You were the dynamic duo.
Yeah, the bespectacled dynamic person. So we don't have a lot of time left, which is really crazy because we could do this clearly all night. I did want to say that the fact that Jonathan had that Peasants Feast in and of itself, you know, I've been around a lot of years in this business. I've never been a part of anything like that, where the writer of the show, usually the writer of the show is sort of off in the corner, kind of being nervous.
Keep his job.
You know, for Jonathan to welcome us into his home, which was normally, that was a ritual that he was doing with his friends and his really close circle of friends, and they graciously enough said, "No, we don't have to come that night. This can be for this," you know, that they were.
He felt guilty,
Yeah,
remember?
I know.
And he got verklempt.
And he welcomed us into his home, and we
And
it was
into
a
his
potluck
life
dinner.
as we were representing those very people.
We all
And
had
he
to bring
shared that with
something
us.
to eat. Do you remember
Yeah.
what you brought?
I brought a salad. That's what
What kind of salad? Like, did it have quinoa and kale?
There was no
That's-
quinoa and
That's
kale
new
went all
shit,
around
right?
This is a newfangled
Bet you
thing.
it was just
quinoa and kale.
iceberg lettuce, right? Romaine.
And,
Did I
and,
bake?
and he gave a toast and he thanked us, you know. So again, that's just, you know, I know that there's like you guys have probably some image, and it's because, you know, it's sort of such a legendary situation. He was our friend, he was our collaborator, but he absolutely was an extraordinary person. I mean, the legend is real, if that makes any sense. Because our time is limited, I was hoping that we would have at least a little time to get a couple questions from the folks in the audience. I don't know, like if you're just gonna have to shout and then we'll repeat it. I see a red sweater right there. Would your hand shout up really quick? So just shout and then we'll repeat the question. Or we can maybe run a microphone too, like Phil Donahue style.
Here, catch.
The first time I heard about Rent was the Tony Awards, and they described it as a young starving artist in a dilapidated building who aren't paying the rent.
That's what they said, yeah?
Yes, that's how they described it. I'm like, what is this? But the moment I heard the music, I was like, I want to see it. My daughter and I have seen it 3 times. My question is, what was it like that night appearing on the Tony Awards? I mean, was it like a big deal? I mean, was it like, wow, this is... And we were doing it for Jonathan?
We had done a show that day. We were exhausted, talk about tired.
Yeah, when you're young and you don't think. But
Right, we were just in mode, go.
But can I just say
I have
really
an
quick?
embarrassing story to tell.
Oh, good.
about that.
Tell what?
Go ahead.
I was up at Jacob's Pillow rehearsing, and I got a call saying I was nominated for a Tony, and I was like, "What's the Tony?"
Awesome. That's sweet. That's awesome. Well, the other thing about all of that, I mean, the other thing with everything is that, you know, you're seeing it with Hamilton now. Hamilton is everywhere, as it should be. The huge difference is that Lin-Manuel is alive, and Jonathan wasn't. So everything that was happening for us was thrilling and terrible at the same time.
Can I say, well, speaking of that, I saw Hamilton last night. It was, you know, just sensational. And they'd asked, do you want a seat or stand? And I said, stand. And for the first time after, I was talking to my friends after, and was talking to Lynn, and for the first time I was speechless. Yes, because the show was so brilliant, but also what was going through my head was Jonathan and how we never got to say to him, wow, look what you've done.
He wanted to bring pop music and Broadway back together, and he did it. Last Ship,
Yes.
Emmanuel, Billy Joel wrote for Broadway, Cyndi Lauper. It is crazy, and all the time it's Jonathan in your mind.
Yeah, and so Lynn, we just, you know, we just looked at each other and he said, I said, I literally was rendered speechless. And then we smiled, we hugged, and then we just started laughing. This joy, and he said, I've never seen you speechless. I said, neither have I. And then I got sad for a moment, because I realized that when we found out that our friend passed, I know I can only speak for myself, but hopefully we're all, we didn't have time to really mourn or grieve. And we were just on a rocket ship, and then
We had to celebrate.
we had to
same
celebrate.
time, yes.
And then the sadness turned into joy in one moment of, how do you figure a life? How do you measure a life? And it was joy. And it was, thank you.
I've always thought so much of the day that he died, and we had the performance for his friends and family. It happened during La Vie Boheme too, because La Vie Boheme is also that same thing. It's this group of people who are living life fully in the face of whatever happens, and that there was no other way to do it. It's like you can't pretend. You can't. There's no pretending. When something like that happens, you can't hide it away. You can't pretend. It's there.
Celebrated that night. You got on that table
As fully as
I'll
possible.
never forget that. And just.
And I promise you, I was not putting it into a corner. It was there, but that's also what was. That's what Love People. That's what this whole show is. It's living in the face of it anyway, and not forgetting about it, not trying to pretend it didn't exist. So it's, and when I say it's terrible, it doesn't mean it makes it bad. It just means it's both things at once all the time. Just like the end of the show, I die without you, live no day but today, all at the same time. Both things are true.
Yeah, and it was, it's interesting about mourning and death, because lots of experience with that, but that it was, we could afford to be extremely brave and courageous, because we had each other. We really, the word was not overused, perhaps, galvanized. We were melted together.
And we were melded together.
And like ambassadors of, because he wasn't there to do it, I think.
We were also the only ones that were going through it, all of us together. We were latching on to each other, and that is why we.
Yeah, it's hard to go through something when you're in the middle of it. It's like,
it
it doesn't disconnect.
Yeah.
Julie, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that although my brother didn't live to see the kind of success that Wendt has become and what's happened with musical theater as a result, he was supremely confident of what he had, and for all the people who were doubting whether to take it, he knew exactly what he had. He wasn't sure if anyone else was going to be able to see it, but he was confident and terrified at the same time. But that last night, when you had the invited dress rehearsal, he was enormously proud of each and every one of you and of what he had done, and he felt whatever happened that he had done it.
Because he was being interviewed. He was being interviewed by the New York Times that evening.
Correct.
And we didn't say goodbye because he was in the booth.
Box office.
Right? He was in the
we
box
walked by and
office.
waved. You're like,
We
see you
just waved,
tomorrow.
see you tomorrow.
Yeah. And it was like, good job. We'll see each other tomorrow. And tomorrow was our first dress rehearsal.
Opening night.
First preview, rather. Yeah. First preview. That was our first dress rehearsal. Yeah.
So it truly is live each moment as your last. And
Absolutely.
just, really being grateful for every moment and every second, as opposed to looking at life in a way of, oh, I wish I... The only way to go is forward, one foot in front of the other, and just be thankful. Because we don't know when our last breath will be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. I'm 13 and really getting into musical theater. What advice would you give your younger self?
Listen to everything. What? Yeah. Listen to everything. The world, the universe, the planet is your teacher. And like, don't, try not to. I mean, you will naturally have inclinations towards a certain kind of style or music, and so like listen to yourselves. Like, just say yes to everything. You're too young to have an opinion yet. No, I totally don't mean that, but just like take it all in. Use everything.
And this is not a leading question, I'm just honestly curious. Do you consider yourself a Rent fan?
Yes.
Yeah, and you're 13, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you weren't born when it came out. That's pretty crazy.
Oh, please.
I had to bring that up. You had to like underline that. Like,
I teach the children of
we
people
could
who
do
are sleeping
math.
out there, and they're like, oh my God, I was sleeping out there, and now I have this 12-year-old for you to teach. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Just soak everything in, work, and train in every single thing that you're interested in. Don't be a one-trick pony. Just absorb everything. If it's just musical theater that you enjoy, also take some martial arts, also take some track, also take this. Get interested in making and be a multi-dimensional person.
Jesus Christ.
Just absorb it all. Because that's me.
And don't be afraid to be a fool. I'm a mother, you can tell. Hey, don't be afraid to fail because it's all winning. Okay, you go.
But also, if you get a no from any show or whatever, it doesn't matter. Keep going, because there's something else out there for you. Keep going.
They're doing you a favor. They're clearing the road to what is right.
And all your auditions are just workshops.
Yep.
So have fun in them.
That's right.
And it's all a rehearsal.
It's never personal. The no's are never personal. It's always has.
It's always personal.
For this one, maybe.
So, on behalf of my friends Melissa and Stephanie, who helped create this event, BroadwayCon, I wanted to thank all of you personally for accepting our invitation to share your stories. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting.
Sorry.
And thank you, Jonathan Larson. Thank you.